This was the perfect Shabbat to celebrate a wonderful bat mitzvah, because it was a difficult week, and this morning just lifted all of our spirits. It was a difficult week because of the murder of two staffers who worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, Yaron Lischinsky and Sarah Milgrim, Zichronam Livracha, who were gunned down outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, a place that celebrates Jewish heritage and dialogue in Washington. Yaron was 30 years old, was a German Israeli and a Christian who made Aliyah at 16 years old. He wrote essays on the Abraham Accords that inspired interfaith leaders and found his support for Israel to be deep-rooted in his Christian faith, aligning with the strong support many Christians offer Israel as a democratic beacon. Sarah was 26. She was a Jewish American from Kansas who worked with an organization called Tech to Peace, uniting young Israelis and Palestinians through technology, fostering collaboration. They were a couple nearing engagement. I'm sure many of you have seen the pictures that have been posted of them. A beautiful, beautiful young couple. Their lives radiating hope for coexistence. Their killer was a man named Elias Rodriguez, 30 years old, Latino, graduate of the University of Illinois in Chicago. And when he was arrested, he shouted, "Free Palestine," and was wearing a keffiyeh, twisting a political cause into a hateful act that stole two lives and discarded his own for a conflict with no personal connection to him. How could Rodriguez, raised in America, become so radicalized? The answer, I believe, lies in radical progressive ideology on university campuses, which has crossed a dangerous line. Cloaked in the rhetoric of equity and diversity and inclusion, it is an ideology that casts Jews and others as oppressors and turns students like Rodriguez into agents of hatred who see murder as activism. So my sermon today is specifically directed at the leaders of Canada's universities, because I want to urge them to recognize their indirect responsibility for these murders. Our campuses are fostering this narrative. They are amplifying division. They are allowing violence to be celebrated. The murders of Yaron and Sarah are a wake-up call. This has to stop before it claims more lives. The Parsha we read this morning, Behar, offers a divine blueprint for justice through the Jubilee year and the sabbatical year. Every 7th year, the land rests. Every 50th year, the Jubilee year, restores property and frees the enslaved. The Torah's message that it is a year to proclaim liberty throughout the land. These laws prevent entrenched inequality. They remind us of our shared humanity. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, says the Torah. For the land is mine. You are just strangers and sojourners with me. We are stewards. entrusted to treat the land and its people with fairness. The Midrash teaches God gave the land to humanity as a sacred trust to be guarded with justice, for when you act unjustly, the land cries out to its true owner. The land is a divine gift, demanding stewardship to uphold justice. When exploitation prevails, the land's cry signals betrayal. Universities, as stewards of knowledge, hold a similar trust. When we allow ideologies to vilify Jews and excuse violence, we betray this trust, as seen in Rodriguez's radicalization. The sabbatical year, the Jubilee year, they model a society that resets imbalances. Leaders of universities, you've got to reset your campuses. You've got to curb divisive narratives. You've got to restore fairness and foster dialogue. Yaron and Sarah were two people who lived this vision. Their murders demand that you act. Yaron and Sarah's murders reflect a surge in anti-Semitism. Here in our country, Statistics Canada reports a 71% increase in hate crimes against Jews, synagogues defaced, schools threatened, community centers harassed. Arrests uncovered plots for large-scale attacks against the Jewish community, fueled by Israeli-Palestinian tensions, inflamed by campus rhetoric. Globally, France sees vandalized Jewish cemeteries, and the United Kingdom reports a 43% spike in anti-Semitic incidents. And I could go on and on. Rodriguez, radicalized at a prestigious university, shows how academia breeds violence. Israel is not fighting Gaza's people. We can't say it enough. Since October 2023, Israel has battled Hamas, a terrorist organization so morally twisted that it purposefully places children in harm's way and starves them to exploit their suffering, gaining sympathy to delegitimize Israel. And I hate to say it, but their tactic is succeeding. It's succeeding in Canada, it's succeeding in France, and beyond. But it cannot succeed, or the terrorists will have discovered a way to be permanently victorious in their conflicts. Israel has paid a terrible toll. Thousands dead, families broken, and now Yaron and Sarah's murders. It all demands that Hamas not remain in power, that the terrorists be defeated, or these sacrifices are for nothing. The free world has to resist this tactic, and universities must stop amplifying it. Rodriguez had no stake in this conflict, none at all. Yet progressive ideology embedded in DEI cast Jews as oppressors, fueling violence. The University of Illinois in Chicago apparently is so bad that Jews don't attend anymore. It is a Judenrein campus. The United States is showing real leadership in investigating campus anti-Semitism. But Canada lags, allowing this ideology to spread. University leaders, you are indirectly responsible. Your failure to challenge radicalization led to Yaron and Sarah's deaths, excusing violence as resistance. This must stop. DEI initiatives intended to promote fairness have spiraled out of control in Canada, clashing with Jewish values by fostering division and limiting opportunities based on identity. The Talmud teaches a court that judges all equally, without favoring one group over another, upholds the world. But a court that tilts justice toward one side destroys it. This teaching is rooted in the Torah's commandment, "You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality." This emphasizes impartial justice and individual merit. Jewish tradition sees each person as created in God's image, worthy of equal dignity and equal accountability. In Canadian universities, DEI initiatives often prioritize group quotas over merit, undermining this principle completely. For example, hiring policies at institutions like the University of Toronto and UBC have set explicit targets for underrepresented groups, sidelining qualified candidates, often Jews, Asians, or whites, based solely on identity. Scholarship programs such as those at McGill reserve funds for specific racial groups, excluding others regardless of need or achievement. Faculty promotions increasingly weigh equity contributions over academic excellence, as seen in recent tenure guidelines at Western University, penalizing those who don't align with DEI goals. These practices tilt justice, as the Talmud warns, casting Jews as overprivileged oppressors despite our history of persecution, fueling resentment like Rodriguez's, where Jews become targets of resistance. By favoring group identity over individual merit, DEI limits opportunities, fostering division rather than unity. Jewish values demand universal standards, while DEI's collective guilt excuses violence against oppressors. You, university presidents, must recognize how these out-of-control initiatives contradict the Torah's justice and contributed to the hatred that killed Yaron and Sarah and fuels those who support, still today, the fact that they were murdered. Radical progressive ideology divides. It teaches students to see oppressors versus victims. That's the way you look at the world, scapegoating Jews. DEI reinforces all of this. It excuses violence as injustice responses, as in Rodriguez's case. Campus practices like undisciplined student groups chanting violent slogans, biased curricula demonizing Israel, tenured faculty promoting one-sided views, create echo chambers. Universities should foster critical thinking, yet many tolerate this ideology and ignore its violent potential. And Yaron and Sarah's murder is a consequence. Justice and respect must be cultivated. Instead, universities are places where hatred is disguised as activism. Canada is a beacon of diversity, tolerance, and respect where communities coexist. You, university leaders, must uphold these Canadian values to prevent tragedies like Yaron and Sarah's murders, rooted in Rodriguez's radicalization. The radical progressive ideology and out-of-control DEI frameworks on our campuses threaten Canada's social fabric by fostering division and excusing violence. You have a moral and civic duty to act decisively and transform our institutions into spaces that reflect the best of Canada's pluralistic ideals. To do this, undertake comprehensive reforms that address the root causes of hatred and radicalization. Overhaul academic programs to prioritize balanced, evidence-based perspectives that encourage critical inquiry over ideological conformity. Strengthen policies to ensure campus discourse remains respectful, holding accountable those who promote or tolerate rhetoric that incites harm. Invest in initiatives that bring students together across differences. Foster empathy and understanding, much like the peace-building work that Yaron and Sarah championed. Build systems to monitor and address hate incidents transparently, ensuring there is trust in your commitment to fairness. Engage with the broader community to reinforce your role as leaders in upholding tolerance. These efforts must be bold and sustained, resetting your campuses just as the Jubilee year resets social imbalances, ensuring no student is radicalized into hatred as Rodriguez was. Yaron and Sarah's murders are dire warnings, friends, to all of us that unchecked hatred will spill into Canada's streets and unravel our society. Act now to make your universities beacons of reason, justice, and peace, ensuring no more lives are lost to ideologies that excuse violence. Parashat Behar teaches stewardship and justice. It calls us to guard God's trust. As the Midrash warns, injustice makes the land cry out. The Talmud's call for impartial justice indicts DEI's divisive approach, which fueled Rodriguez's hatred. Yaron Lischinsky and Sarah Milgrim lived as stewards of peace. I urge us to remember not how they died, but how they lived. They built bridges across divides. Their murders were enabled by a radical progressive ideology and out-of-control DEI initiatives. They challenge all of us, but university leaders in particular, to act. All who yearn for a world where individuals are judged by their merit, not their group identity, share a common hope that our institutions uphold fairness and reject division. Rodriguez's radicalization reflects universities' failures to challenge ideologies that excuse violence as resistance. We pray you awaken to this danger. Reform your campuses to prioritize inquiry, fairness, and dialogue. Imagine universities where debates are respectful, where students learn empathy and justice prevails, where no one is reduced to an oppressor or a victim based on identity, but rather valued for their actions, character, and contributions. Honor Yaron and Sarah by making Canada's universities beacons of peace, aligned with the Torah's vision of a world sustained by impartial justice, and bring closer the day when Isaiah's prophecy might be fulfilled. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Shabbat Shalom.